And our first breakaway session here will be on the $100 product idea validation, spend big or experiment on the fly. So how do you decide to launch a feature, a product, or a company? How do you validate an idea, splurge $10,000 on research and focus groups, or go to the corner ATM, draw $100, build and see if they come? Learn tools and tips and on-ground insights from the entrepreneurs. I'd like to call on our panelists for this session. Our first panelist, please welcome to the dais, Mr. Amit Somani. Amit is the Chief Products Officer for Make My Trip and has worked with Google and IBM, holding 7 patents and several awards. Amit studied at the University of Wisconsin and IT BHU. Our next panelist for this session, I'd like to welcome Mr. Mukund Mohan. Mukund is the founder and CEO of Jivity. He founded BuzzGain, which was purchased by Meltwater. Mukund has over 15 years of experience in sales, marketing, and product management, including at Cisco and HP. I'd now like to call on our next panelist. Please welcome Mr. Pallav Nadhani. Pallav is the co-founder and CEO of FusionCharts and an angel investor. He started FusionCharts at 17. Today, FusionCharts has over 18,000 customers and 400,000 users in over 110 countries. Our next panelist who will join us here on the dais, please welcome Mr. Paras Chopra. Paras is the CEO of Wingify, the company behind Visual Website Optimizer. In less than 1 year, Paras has acquired 10,000 plus users and customers like Microsoft, Groupon, and AMD. And to head the panel, I'd now like to call on Mr. Amit Ranjan. Amit is co-founder and CEO of SlideShare, an engineer turned marketer turned entrepreneur. Amit heads SlideShare's Delhi office and has worked with PepsiCo and Asian Paints. Over to our panelists.
So thanks a lot. I have to say that we are up against a real tough task because we don't stand a chance, but we'll try all the same. So, so are you planning to launch a product and you have this $1 million question in your mind? How do I validate the idea for the product? And suppose you had $100 in your pockets, and the question you're trying to ask is, what is the cheapest way in which I could get an answer to my question? Are there real, cheap, quick, and dirty ways of doing this? I mean, this could be an audience survey, or this could be a focus group discussion, or maybe what you need to do is to just build an application or a rough prototype and see what happens. Well, these are some of the questions that we are going to be talking about in this panel. And the panel has some very exciting members, and all of them have a very good background in different aspects of product management. And just to kind of, very quickly go through it again. So Amit Somani is with Make My Trip, and Pallav Nadhani is from FusionCharts, and Mukund Mohan is from Jivity, and Paras Chopra is from Visual Website Optimizer. Okay, so now in terms of the session, we are trying to be a little experimental here. And so instead of a typical, panel Q&A, what we are trying to do out here is that we'll give you a bunch of tips and tricks related to product validation that you can take away from this session, and you can actually go back tomorrow and implement in your own work. Okay? And the twist here is that these tips and tricks are going to come from the panelists, and we also want them to come from the audience. Okay, and so what we've done in this regard is that there are going to be 2 short audience jam sessions, and we'd love to hear the tips and tricks that the audience has versus what the panelists have. Okay, and just to kind of give a certain flow to the session, what we've done is that we've divided it into 5 tracks. And each of the panelists will be taking 5 minutes to talk a little bit about that track. And the first one is, so we thought about it, and we felt that these tracks represent different dimensions of product validation. And there is also a logical flow to the way how one would do that. And so the first one is about estimating the market size. This will be taken up by Mukund. And the next one is about vetting the idea itself, and this will be taken up by Pallav. Then the next one is about prototyping, and this will be taken up by Amit Somani. Moving on to Paras, who will be talking about some of the validation tools that you could do, that you could use in this scenario. And finally, I'll be spending 5 minutes of how do you iterate and how do you pivot your idea to shape into something that is really meaningful. And as the slide shows, we'll break for 10 minutes for the audience jam after the first 2 sessions, and likewise after the next 2 ones. And at the end, we hope to summarize the learnings here, and Amit Somani will be doing that. So, audience, this is your chance. You're getting an opportunity to come up with your tips and tricks, and it's entirely possible that what you guys have to share will completely outdo what we have to talk about here. And so let's move on with this session. Okay, and the first panelist here is Mukund. Okay.
There's
Can the
seats up
people
front.
from the back come
Couple.
in case it's required? Right. So I'll pass over to Mukund. And Mukund, you have 5 minutes, and you have $100. In fact, you have $20 because there are 5 of us. And you have to tell us, your tips and tricks of how would you go about, estimating the market.
Perfect. Thanks, Amit. There are 3 things I wanted to cover in my session. The first thing, which I'm very, very passionate about, is talk to everybody. When you have an idea, talk to each and every person to be able to make the idea better. So that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. The second thing I'm going to cover is primarily going to be around trying to estimate what you think is the potential size of the market, which is, I think, part art, part science, and mostly hocus pocus. And the third part that I'm going to talk about is going to be primarily, one of the questions I face. Give me a quick show of hands. How many of you guys have this problem? You get 100 ideas in one day, and you get no ideas for the next 100 days. So what happens when you get 100 ideas in one day is every one of them seem good on paper, and every one of them seem bad 10 minutes later. So what I typically go through is how do I figure out, I'll share with you what I do in terms of trying to figure out which ones are, and I think everybody has heard consistently, the ideas that you go after are as important as the one that you decide to go after, right? And another thing, how many of you face this problem? Whenever you're talking to a person, you throw 3-4 ideas and say, which one does the person react to? I'll go after that one, right? Most of you guys probably do that also. You have 3-4 ideas floating at your mind at any point of time when you're trying to start. And this is when you're at the napkin stage of the company. So those are the 3 things I'm going to talk about. First thing is going to be talk to as many people as possible over the idea. A lot of people have this notion that I shouldn't share with somebody because they may steal it, or they may go and tell it to a VC, and the VC will fund them, and they will go ahead and make a bigger company. The second thing I'm going to talk about is estimation. And I'm not going to give you so much of here is how everybody should do it, as much as how I did it and how I tried to convince a few people as to what the size of the market was going to be. And the third one is primarily going to be around how do you go after a market-specific idea or something that you have domain expertise on. I mean, a lot of us have domain expertise in specific areas versus, there's a market that is much bigger. Should I go after that one? Fair enough, those are the 3 things. First thing, I want to tell you a little story. I love stories. I think a lot of people who know me love that I tell a lot of stories. I'll tell you one of the stories that I had. When I started BuzzGain, this was in 2008, there was a gentleman called Richard Jalichandra. Any of you heard of a company called Technorati, who does blogging? Okay, quite a few of you heard Technorati. Richard Jalichandra had just taken over as the CEO of Technorati. This was back in 2008. And I had an idea, or 2-3 different ideas, if you will, in the same space that Technorati, apparently I thought, already was working in. So I, for about nearly 3 or 4 days, I kept working on this idea, talking to a lot of people as much as possible. The reason why I say that is because people enhance your ideas. The ideas always get enhanced by other people. And you know what the best part is? They don't claim that idea to be theirs anyway. They'll just say, I like this idea, but what if you do this? So Richard Jalichandra, I call him at about 9:30. After nearly 3 days of deliberating, should I even call him because he might take my idea, and Technorati has the resources and the money. They were venture funded with about $14 million in venture funding. 3 days I agonized over it, talked to 10 people and said, should I talk to him, should I not talk to him? Some people said yes, some people said no. In the end, I was as confused as I started before. So I picked up the phone eventually, got the guts to just call him and say, hey, Richard, I want to talk to you for 10 minutes. This is what I'm trying to do. And I told him basically the idea of what I was trying to go after, which was trying to create a database of bloggers that PR people could use more effectively to do it-yourself PR. He said, that's the most stupidest idea I've ever heard of, because we tried that and it didn't work. He said, let me tell you what we want you to do, because we have a lot of people who are coming and telling us to do it, but we don't have the resources to do it. So he came and told me, if you do this, so what he came back with eventually was actually an enhancement, much, much more better than my original idea. And within 15 seconds, I pivoted, by the way. How many of you have gone through 10 pivots in about 10 minutes? Yeah. Pivoting, people usually think you should do 6 months after the company. I pivot the idea in 10 minutes. Every 10-minute phrases, I keep pivoting on the idea. And literally, the word is pivot, right? So Richard came back and said, you know what, Mukund, most of the guys who have talked to me, most of our customers are saying, this is what they particularly need. Your idea is good, but you know what, you're not going to make a lot of money on that. The reason I say that is because, Richard said this, the reason I say that is because most people don't want to pay for this kind of a database. They'd rather pay for connections. So build a connection platform, you probably do much better. He was my first customer after we actually launched the product. Biggest competitor that I thought would be in the market became my first customer, and they actually were the biggest reseller for us also. Second amazing point, there was a gentleman called Francois Gossio, who at that point in time was working for a company called Documentum. Documentum, I expected to be a potential customer of mine. I went back and told Francois, hey, Francois, I'm looking at this particular thing that I want to be able to go ahead and do. What do you think? He said, yeah, but you know, here are the 2-3 other things that I've heard some of the customers have told me that they would like to be able to see. Would you be interested in working like that? We'd like to be a beta customer. He gave me 2 or 3 ideas, which actually became the core features of the base product, much better than what we originally had thought. So point number 1, keep talking. I talked to probably even my mom. I wouldn't have a problem even talking to a couple of other guys also associated with that. So that's the first part. Second point is estimation. I think estimation for most parts is very, very difficult, top-down or bottom-up. My only suggestion to you is when you do estimation on an ongoing basis, typically people tend to overestimate the market when you're an entrepreneur, underestimate it when you're a VC. So the thing that you want to do is to make sure that you focus in on what is addressable within the immediate 6 to 9 month time frame. And the last point, which is about trying to go after markets which are ones that you know versus don't know. My experience has taught me that I'm always better off being in markets that I have a lot of domain expertise, simply because of one fact. You'll find that it takes 2 years for you to build relationships and also capital within a specific area. So you're better off going after people and projects that you know a lot more about than going after a virgin market that may be much bigger.
Thanks a lot. So the key takeaways are, number 1, you need to talk to multiple people. Talk to as many as you can. Number 2, that the market estimation, is kind of like a holy science. And so what you should be gunning for is an addressable market that you can look at over the next 9 to 12 months. And the third thing is that, it's always better to focus on markets about which you have a knowledge, something related to your core competency. So that's what Mukund had to say. And, let's move on to the next track, and this is for Pallav. And Pallav is going to be talking about how do you actually vet the product idea itself.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start with a very simple statement, which is you never start with a brilliant idea. You always discover it over time. Some of the biggest companies in the world started with a different idea than what you see them working today. And over time, they refine them. And whenever you get an idea, it's not necessary that that idea is going to work. You'll have to refine it over time. And there are multiple ways to do with it. I'll start with a small story of how FusionCharts came into place. FusionCharts was never meant to be a company. It didn't even occur to my mind when I was 16 back then that I'll start a company. I found very boring Excel charts back in 2001, and I thought I could introduce some fun and spice to it. And I actually wrote an article on how that could be done. And that was the seed for the product. So people read that article. They asked me to change this, change that. They even offered me some money for customizations. And that is where we recognized, or I recognized at that point in time, that there's some potential in this idea. And I could go and refine it based on the improvements suggested and build it into a product. And since then, we have not taken any idea decision on our own. People have come and told to us over time what they need. And from 1 product to 16 products today, all of them have been customer initiatives. So for each idea that we get, for each product that we make, there are multiple sources where we collect our data from. One is, as Mukund already pointed out, always speak to customers. If you're planning to launch a product and the only thing in your mind is let's do a pre-product launch survey as to what people want, more often than not, the recency effect will come into play. People will tell you their most recent problems, and not dwell on the bigger spectrum of what they have in mind. And you have to elevate their pain points. You have to get the threshold of pain for those customers very high that they speak out, this is how you can help me. So one of the things which has not worked out very well for us is plain surveys or the 80-20 Pareto rule. And what has worked out very well for us is actually getting in touch with each customer and asking open-ended questions. So we ask questions like, what can we do to help you increase your revenue? What are your pain points? If we give you a magic wand, which you could wave and take away which could take away two of your problems, what would those be? This lets the customer think deeper into his own problems and come up with certain issues from which you can take cue on further build up your product idea. And online, we use a lot of our customer-focused initiatives like our forums. We go to competitor forums and see what people are complaining about, what lack they're having in certain products, and then build up on that and put it into our product. And pivoting is always a part of the story. And if you have multiple ideas, idea management becomes a very important exercise. At any point in time, we have multiple ideas, but the question is, do you have the internal capabilities to deliver on each of them? How tractable is the idea? Can you build it in 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, and go out and test it? One of the most interesting experiences that we had was we built a product where the product was perfect, but what failed us was the distribution of it. We built an extension of FusionCharts for a product called FileMaker, and it was based on customer feedback again. So we had this huge set of initial customers or initial prospects who said, we would love it if you build it. And we took inputs from them. We said, fine, this is how it goes. And those customers loved it. What failed was the distribution. Users of FileMaker, apart from those early adopters, were not present on the web. And our distribution was primarily on the web. So we couldn't reach out to more users beyond the initial set of users, because of which the product did not do well, and we had to later open source it. But most of our other products are in developer space, which is a B2B space. And there are certain differences when you are handling a B2B space product versus a B2C space product. In a B2C space product, the traction is more of eyeballs or more of actions. Whereas in a B2B product, the simple rule is, are you getting paid for it? If you're not getting paid for your B2B product, probably something somewhere is going wrong. You're not addressing a pain point. In a B2C product, your sample size or your service size or your focus group is going to be a lot larger because you're addressing a much larger segment. In a B2B product, again, you can start with a very small segment of users who you know have this problem set, and you can go ahead and solve it. And more so in the developer segment, which we operate in, getting out a product in MVP, which is a minimum viable product, and marking it as beta helps us iterate the product much faster. So we do a lot of releases, and we iterate very fast. So every other week or every other month, we do a release, because the developer mindset is always meant to go and try out the latest version. Whereas if you're doing the same for a consumer, the upgrade cycle is going to be a lot longer, because they just want something which works and they want to forget about it. And the easier part is developers become your fanboys. So if you're building a developer product, you can get some of these early developers, engage them in deep conversations, make them happy about your product, and they also become your sales and marketing agents, because they will absolutely love your product, give you honest feedback about it. And in terms of the product itself, it's not just the core product which you have to validate. You also have to look at the other parts of the product, which is the packaging and the support and the distribution channels, all of which come as a part of this. So I think I'm running out of time, and I'll field any questions later on.
Thanks, Pallav. I think one of the key takeaways from this was that you actually never start off with a brilliant idea. You know, the idea evolves over time, and that's how you refine it and you build it into something which is useful. So I think we're done with the first 2 tracks, and I would like to call upon Amit Somani. You know, he's going to just quickly introduce the jam and how it's going to run, and we want this to come from the audience. So, Amit.
Thanks, Amit. It's like Thompson and Thompson from Tintin resurging. So this is going to be a little different. So far, you've been all stationary and watching and hearing some great ideas from Mukund and Pallav here. So now we want to hear from you. What has worked for you in the very early stages of a paper napkin idea vetting? So a couple of us will sort of float around in the audience. It'll be like an auction, so it'll be very, very quick. You can't pontificate for 3 minutes, 4 minutes. It's 30 seconds. You have an idea about how have you vetted ideas yourself? How have you estimated markets? Perhaps even what mistakes have you made? So 30 seconds, and we start now. Who wants to go first? We have another mic. Yo, Pinkesh.
I'm Pinkesh from Adaptive Marketing. One of the things that we've done is LinkedIn polls. And this has worked beautifully without a penny, obviously. You don't even you can save the $100 for something else because this doesn't cost anything. And the beauty about LinkedIn polls that we found much better than the normal surveys is you actually get demographics, limited insights into who, what age, what profession, what industry when you get the results back. So,
wonderful. It's a great start. Yeah, Samir.
We were trying to launch Pune's first youth magazine. And it used to go to about 100 odd colleges. I was burning money left, right, and center. But then we realized a lot of marketing guys don't want to spend on something small and niche. And that was actually very rude because we spoke to a couple of companies like Coke and all, and they said, boss, we've got a lot of money to spend. Give us a national magazine and we'll spend. Don't give me a magazine that goes just to colleges. Yeah, that was a little strange. We can't figure out what went wrong there.
Cool. There's a question somewhere in the back.
Somewhere out here.
Yeah.
Hi. Actually, once I got the idea of my education startup as a software assessment product, I had to do a research and understand the market scalability and the market environment there. So I just, first thing I did, I went to all the colleges, that was my segment. And I had to get the work done for the research, and also it has to be quality. So I went to IMB students. So, I mean, for me, quality work can also be done, and also I don't need to spend too much time, too much money for the exhaustive reports and all those things, where they get it, all kinds of reports, they get it from the, in the college itself. So that's how.
Use students as some kind of initial testing ground. Okay. We have one more here, Amit.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello. Hi, my name is Amol. 1 year back, I started a corporate wellness firm known as Juventus. It was basically providing corporate wellness services to the corporates. The idea struck to me, and what I did is, as the first speaker suggested, I spoke to 6 of my friends, and one of the friends said, hey, I can introduce you to my MD, and you can do a pilot. Thank God, pilot went successful, and we are doing good so far.
Wonderful. That's in the back there.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Prasant, and we manage a blog called Lighthouse Insights, which basically caters about Indian social media insights and updates. So when I spoke to a couple of friends, I was like, point. So nobody said that it will work. Said that it is a very small market. It won't work. Initially, for 1 or 2 months, nobody was reading the blog. So what we started to do is that we started asking people, whatever, our friends or fans, what do you actually read in a blog? And they said that we want insights. So we started using, LinkedIn as one of the answers as a tool, or Quora as the answers. So we got a lot of responses, and I think with time, with feedback from the fans, we have improved, and we see some more attraction now, people reading, because they're getting what they want. So that's what Pallav has also pointed out.
Wonderful. One from the left side of the brain, right side of the brain.
Hello, I'm Vinayak. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have got a number of, currently I have a startup which is doing well, and so I have failed a number of times before. So my idea is that I always ask myself this question when I get a bright idea as to who's the one who will ridicule it the most, who's the one who will kind of shoot it down. So I usually go to my wife, and because she has seen me failing more times than anyone else has, and she knows how screwed up my thinking is. So and that doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, hi, my name is Sachin.
A lot, more than $100.
My name is Sachin Kelkar. I work with Intel, but it's like a startup company which I drive within Intel. Like, we kind of very interesting stuff. What we normally do is that we always go to the power users through all these LinkedIn's and Facebook polls, which we assume that they are the target customer for us. But we went to the absolutely non-power user to test out a new simplified user interface, which we thought will be interesting for Indian customers, which we develop as a product company within Intel. And we went to absolutely the moms and pops and uncles and aunties to really understand their needs, their fears of computing, and see how we can evolve that to really make it to work as a product idea. So ideas that not only talk about the evolved powers like just folks in this room, but also to reach out to the common masses in India and really use them as your test cases and evolve your product based on that.
Sounds great. We'll do just 2 more and then we'll jump back in. Yeah, the gentleman with the mic here.
So like I'm Gaurang. I started with my website called md.li. So it was particularly about one single university. I became more introvert. So I made it virtual, totally virtual. I never interacted with the students, which was prospective audience. So like it had been 2 years or so. But now I thought that give it a try, give it more public. So I started with my college only. I gave sessions on open source technologies to know what all students think about their studies, and eventually I got the bombastic results. Like the growth which we attained in 2 years was proportional to the growth which we attained after the talks, the sessions which I conducted, and that was equivalent to 1 month. No, so being very real, being talking to the people, to the real audience, matters a lot.
Wonderful. We'll do one last one in the back
last.
there. And then
Hi, I'm Satish from CloudPack. In our earlier company, we were in a customer site where we had a requirement for the company to have mobile applications, and they didn't have the time and resource to invest on those applications for multiple operating systems. And there we got the idea of why can't we solve that problem. So we developed in CloudPack, which is 8 months old company. We developed an enterprise mobile application framework where you can develop with web technologies and you'll be able to run on multiple operating systems once you have done that. That's our story.
Right.
Great.
So thanks a lot. And that kind of sums up that there are different ideas. Some of them are coming from the panelists, and some of them are coming from the users. And so let's move on to the next track. And this is about prototyping. So you have a market and you have an idea. Now, how do you put together something and give it the first shape that you can? And this is over to Amit Somani.
Thanks. So we'll have another jam session right after this, and the next 2 topics. So start thinking about your ideas around prototyping tools and how to vet things live in production. So Mukund and Pallav in the audience talked about the what and the why. Should I bother to do an idea? If so, why should I bother to do it? Is it big enough? Do I have capability to do this? Talk to lots of people. Now you start getting to the how. So okay, great, I have this, I feel good about this. This is not 100 ideas, this is the one that I want to sort of go after. And so the very first, the 2 sort of things that I think about normally, and when I do this, is setting concrete goals about what do you want to accomplish from the prototype, not the product, not the company, not the vision. What do I want to accomplish from the prototype that I'm going to build? And secondly, time box it. And depending on your kind of idea, and I know Pallav spoke a little bit about B2B ideas versus developer-facing ideas versus some back-end technologies versus UI stuff. And I'll focus a little more on the UI stuff for the rest of my chat here. But how much do you want to time box this? And I would typically recommend at early stages not to do more than a couple of days, max a couple of weeks. So it's, in some cases, people even do it in a couple of hours. Mukund does it in 10 minutes, as he shared earlier. So it's, it's a couple of days to a week, perhaps. And therefore, you're time boxing yourself into what can I get done in a week that I can actually put in front of real customers or users or prospects and kind of validate that. So the tools that I've used in the past personally, and there's a gazillion more and would love to hear from the audience in the jam that have worked, could be as primitive but perhaps as powerful as just a sheet of paper. So you have a sheet of paper, bunch of multicolored post-it notes, and you actually literally, paper mock up your idea by just scribbling, this is what this does and this is what this does. And admittedly, I'm focusing a little more on UI or B2C or web kind of ideas. But you just do paper mock-ups, talk to people. You can move the post-its around, right? You say, this is not what it is, this is what it is. No, what if I did this instead? Almost like Lego blocks, for those of you that have kids and play with them. So that's one. People have used, PowerPoint, even Excel to do prototypes. I've seen some interesting prototypes, if I may, for validating of ideas, just in Excel, right? So you're not paying in terms of doing any very fancy stuff or development or anything like that just yet. You're just putting something together in a few days. And as you go up the spectrum, there's obviously much more interesting things you can do. One very interesting tool that actually a colleague of mine had pointed out to me is something called Wingify, W-I-R-I-F-Y, which you can take an actual web page, any web page on the, that you find, and you can convert it into wires. Okay, you can convert it into mocks for those of you, wire diagrams, and then you can drag and drop those wires around in terms of what you are visualizing. So Wingify, there is Exure, there's Dreamweaver, there's a whole bunch of tools that are out there that you can do, that you can use to kind of build your quick and dirty, couple of days kind of a prototype. The goals were defined. You knew how much time you were going to spend on it. You use some of these tools. Not all of them are free, but you probably already have them with you, and so many of them are free as well. The last thing that I'll point out, and this is something that we do a lot at Make My Trip as well, is once you already have a product, you already have an audience. So it's not a brand new company, brand new idea, and now I want to evolve it. How do I figure out if there is demand for this or not, or what the product shape should look like? So for example, for domestic flights, intra-India flight ticketing, we wanted to explore if there is a demand for people wanting to do an airport card transfer with the flight. So when you're buying your flight, I just flew in this morning from Delhi, would I want to take a card transfer from the Devanahalli to the Taj? And so without actually having any product, any backend, any contracting, anything, we just on a penultimate page on the checkout funnel added a little widget which says, do you want to add a car transfer instead? And then we told the customer coming soon and register here and so forth. It's a little cheesy, but it works because I have real traffic, I have real users, and it's not a huge complex thing to try out. So you can sort of do a lot of these ongoing, and I was talking to Amit Ranjan, they do this at SlideShare as well. So depending on the stage of your, it could be a feature that you're trying in an existing product. So to summarize, I would just say, don't spend a lot in this particular phase. I think this is where it could go from, being $100 to being a, $10,000, $100,000, whatever. Use things that are quick and dirty and put them in front of users. So with that, perhaps I'll pass it on to Paras to talk about, once you have a prototype, how do you actually start validating, is this prototype for real, and how do you get feedback from users?
Thanks, Amit. So I have a lot of passion for this track, validating the ideas. And one of the reasons is because we make an A/B testing product, which is primarily used to validate your ideas. So carrying onward on what Amit said, prototype is the first hypothesis of your product. It's the first shot that you have. So it's not the final answer for sure. And to get to that final answer on what your product will ultimately look like, going from the prototype stage to the final product stage, you need to have a lot of feedback from the users. And I'll be contributing one specific tip. If you just have $100 to spend to validate your idea, I'll tell that you should spend it on getting more traffic. So this is a very popular technique where people buy $100 worth of AdWords, or they'll buy $100 worth of Facebook and then simply send their traffic on a landing page on a prototype. And that $100 can reveal a lot of flaws in your prototype, or can give you a lot of interesting ideas on how to expand on your product. So with the $100, once you have got the traffic, there are two aspects. When you have a prototype, it could, as I said, it's your first hypothesis, but it could be the case that the market out there responds better to one angle of that prototype rather than the other one. It may be that you think your product's differentiation is going to be on the number of features you have, but who knows if the market responds better to the usability, or market responds better to the pricing angle, that your product is the cheapest. So what I recommend you to do is to perhaps make a series of landing pages, maybe 3 or 4 different landing pages, and those landing pages those landing pages talk about a specific positioning of your product. One landing page could be how many features your product is. Second landing page could be how easy your product is. And third landing page could be about how cheap or how cost effective your product is. Now you are getting traffic worth of $100. Simply split your traffic between these 3 pages and see which one of them gets most interest, or which one of them gets most signups. And you don't even have to have a prototype at this stage. At the most extreme end of this validation, what people simply do, as Amit talked about, they simply have a widget and they don't even have a product or a prototype ready. So you can simply have a form, you can have some mock-ups or screenshots and say, this is my product. And if people click on sign up, enter their information, you can simply say, this product is coming soon and I'll follow up with you. And this gives you two things. First, this gives you how many people are actually interested in your product, and it gives you which angle of your product they are most interested in. And thirdly, you also get email addresses of those prospects. So you can email them and you can hound them to give more and more feedback if is responding best to your product. Or you can do the same thing with different keywords. So you can see whether the teenagers are responding better, or whether people who have laptops who are responding better, or whether people who have iPhones who have responding better. So all the traffic channels out there, they give you a plethora of options to get very focused traffic. So if you have $100, just spend on getting traffic, and that way get feedback on your prototype or the landing page. I guess that's what I had to say.
Great. Thanks, Paras. A lot of things resonate.
Yeah, so we'll open it up to the next jam as well, and like we did the first time. Again, we'd like to hear about what your ideas are. What is it that you
This
have
side of the
done?
room, especially in the back. Anybody who goes in the back, they get first prize. There's one over there. Can we get a mic there? Somebody had a hand here. Second. Maybe you can start while the mic gets there. Yeah.
So I would just like to say Firebug on Firefox works very well for prototyping.
Absolutely. No, actually I had that. Snagit as well was another one. That's one of my favorites.
There's one out here.
Right back, yeah.
I'd like to encourage people to think of the product in terms of more than just the software. Because when you go out to the market, you are actually interacting with the customer, and your interaction could be based on your differentiators could be in the logistics, in the sign up. So you got to do the validation of more than just the software.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one more. If you want to be aware, if you want to be away from the commercial licensing stuff, from the open source community, we have a tool called Pencil Project from Evolus, and Mozilla Firefox supports that pretty well, and is available under GPL licensing. A pretty good tool with the extension on Firefox and all that.
Yeah, over here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gokul. We have a society management software called Apna Complex, and one technique we have used very effectively for prototyping, which I learned while developing Windows, is using PowerPoint. It's a very, very cheap and easy. You can churn prototypes almost in half a day, and you get real good user feedback on that.
Great. There. Why don't you go there? Somebody?
Anybody this side?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, actually, why don't you go ahead?
So, okay, I'm Ankesh, and basically one trick I've learned is never make just one offer, always make two offers. So if you say package A and package B, and you can figure out people, instead of thinking, should I buy this or should I not buy this, they start thinking, which one should I buy? And second thing you can do is,
so now we're getting
smart, dirty trick, but it works.
Yeah, and the second thing is, with the same thing, you can start increasing your price also. Because if package B starts working a lot better, then you want to get rid of package A, come up with package C, which is even more higher price than package B.
Sure. Great. Yeah.
There are two things, two tips here. One is elevator pitch. So try to say something in very short, 30 seconds kind of elevator pitch as to why someone would really put his money to buy your product, and try to say that, and that will really, it is very hard to say because you have so many ideas flooding your mind that boiling it down to 30 seconds really goes to the sweet spot of the product and why someone should pay it. And second is a product box. Instead of a prototype, just make a box, and on that you have limited space, because somebody who's walking into a shop and looks at the box, he should be able to make out what exactly this product is doing, and try to put it on the box just like as if it's a mall in which someone is coming and seeing that box there. So these two things work pretty well.
Over here.
Hi, I'm from Snapdeal, and rather than putting an idea, I have two small questions from Paras. One,
actually, can I ask you to just hold off? We'll do a 10-minute Q&A right after this. So if you have ideas or suggestions on how to do prototyping or validating your prototype, please shoot. There's one in the back there, and then we'll take a couple more, and then we'll do a Q&A with the panel.
Yeah, quick tip on, new B2C product in the market. If you guys are thinking, hey, so I want to lay emphasis on the voice of customer. A lot of people think that I'll spend my $100 at a later stage when my product is evolved. I'll have a fairly, good customer service operational. But please just quickly add, an email at least asking for consumer feedback. You get a lot of very interesting insights and it doesn't cost you much. You can answer the emails at leisure, but it gives you great insights.
Absolutely. Back there.
I have actually found a good use using simple pencil and paper. And a couple of rules I've followed is like if there are steps in the product, don't show more than 6 steps to the customer in the first go. The customer gets confused. And second thing is try to use an example that you will actually do this, a very specific example. Customer finds it easier to relate to that than a very generic way of showing.
Okay, we'll do one more. Up here. Okay, 2 more, Max. There's one, Amit, next to you.
So one of the things that we do within the company is that for all our employees, we actually ask them to give us one suggestion every week, which is how we can be different. What is it that, and these can be people from content, these can be people from non-technology operations, something that they say can make us stand out from the crowd, and then we try to implement that in the product.
Great.
Yeah.
One more, last one there.
Yeah, so validation is done for whom? The prototype is ready, but how you have done the prototyping? You have got the feedback from someone. So
Can you speak up? I don't know if everyone can hear you.
Are you able to
Yeah,
hear
now
now?
better.
Yeah. So we have done the prototyping based on what? From some feedback, right? So we have got this feedback from various people, various customers, right? Or maybe for support we have got some query. So based on that we have done the prototyping. It's always better to take this back to them and get their feedback again and let them validate that.
So I think we're done with this.
So we'll do a panel Q&A. So if I know you had a question here up here, maybe actually the mics need to be back in the audience. Thanks. Right here. There's a question here. Any other questions for people on the panel?
Yeah, this is for Paras and of course open to everybody. One, have you ever kind of drilled down to what is the specific time, to which, duration for which we should perform the A/B and think that, okay, now 2 weeks is good enough time and now we can conclude, or maybe a month or something like that?
So actually this is a bit complicated because there are a number of factors which you need to take into consideration when estimating how long to run an A/B test. And that's because different websites have different conversion rates. So as a thumb rule, if you have a conversion rate on the lesser side, maybe 1%, 2%, you need a lot more traffic as compared to if you have conversion rate on the higher side, maybe 10 or 15%. But at the very least, you should have at least 25 to 30, and that's the least number of conversions before getting to any sort of conclusions. But most of the A/B testings that you will use, they'll automatically tell you about the significance of the results, because in A/B testing, just because if you have 11 signups in the B version and 10 signups in the A version, that doesn't mean B version is working better. There's a random chance. So most of the tools out there, they'll tell you what is the statistical confidence, and they'll also tell you how long you should be running the test.
And another small query, do you think we should go, one step at a time when you're changing the stuff? I mean, for example, at Snapdeal, we were looking for a revamp. We were wondering, going one step at a time makes more difference, or, changing the entire thing altogether. What do you think works best?
It actually depends on the objective. Usually when you're looking forward to doing one small change, it's more towards the optimization side, that you want to increase your signups from 18% to 18.1%. But if you're doing a larger change, that gives you more opportunity to be flexible. Your signups can go either down to 12% or they can go to even 24%. So with small changes, you usually get small improvements, but there's also a risk, lesser risk that you won't affect your conversion rate a lot. But that's again, in A/B tests, you never know. Even small changes, we have case studies where just changing the link color from blue to red, that increased the sales by 30%. So that's the whole point of doing A/B testing.
Yeah. So one point I wanted to make about A/B testing is that one of the things we've realized at SlideShare via A/B testing is that there are different segments of users on your site. And each segment actually represents a different kind of a user. And this we realized, this was one of our realizations from A/B testing, and we were not looking at A/B testing for this. We were actually looking at A/B testing for funnel conversion. So the people who come in through our homepage and they sign up for SlideShare Pro are different
from the people who sign up for Pro from our upload page are different from the people who come in via search and they sign up for SlideShare Pro. And what that has allowed us to do is that we constantly keep mapping, what percentage of overall conversions are these different routes coming from, and that allows us to change the product.
Other questions?
So,
go ahead, please.
So I actually have two questions. First is, and maybe this is for the open panelists, how do you know at what point and how much of the validation work that we've done is actually enough? And I know this depends on a lot of factors, but is there a general rule of thumb maybe you can share?
So I think Amit talked about the time boxing, right? That, you need to have a goal, and B, you need to time box it, right? And I would say some of it is also gut feel. And, for example, when we launch something, you get to know in the first 2 or 3 days which way the wind is blowing, And so which means that you don't want to perpetuate it beyond a certain point because then you're just losing time. Okay,
and the reason I'm asking that question is there are several service providers in the US where you actually give them the survey question, they find the panelists for you, drive the traffic. So that takes a lot of time, which is not necessarily the validation time, but the getting people to your site or to your focus group to validate. So what is available in India that maybe you can share where, if there is such a thing, where people can just focus on the validation part, not the infrastructure to validate?
So unfortunately, so in the US, for example, at your target market is a great one. That is a recent startup. So unfortunately, in India, we haven't really found. In fact, we were looking for a panelist to be from such a company when we were putting the panel together about how do you target specific people. So this is an opportunity for an idea right here for somebody who wants to start a company. So what works really well is what Paras was talking about, which is the Google tags. So you can go buy keywords and use that as a proxy for intent, for real traffic, and then direct that to what you are trying to validate. So it's a proxy. It's not exactly, like he said, iPhone carrying, middle-aged woman with 2 kids, etc. But you can get a sense for the kinds of things that this person would want, or for the kind of product or service. On your previous question, and I think that goes to the question that the lady from Snapdeal had as well, which is, there is a tendency, especially if you have a more mature product, to get stuck in a local maxima. Right? For those of you that are engineers will understand this, where if you're in a search space, you start making it slightly better. So if it's 2% better, that's a win, right? So I'll just go there, and then if it's 2% better, then I get to a win. And then you pretty much plateau out after a while. So then to make any substantial difference, you have to jump to another point in the search space and then start exploring from there so as to reach, or at least attempt to reach the global maxima. So at least for mature products, there is no way but to, based on gut, intuition, other triangulation, talking to users, just jump once in a while to something completely radical. And then, at least for larger companies like a Snapdeal or a MakeMyTrip or a SlideShare, we have enough traffic, thankfully, that we can say, I'm going to expose 2% of traffic to this wild, crazy way of doing X, right? And see how that develops and increase that.
So we have time for 2 more questions.
There's one in the back there.
Can I ask one last one?
Okay.
Quick one. Yeah, quick one. So for the product management community that we run, one question that actually is more for Amit that technically gets asked, who does the wireframing and the prototyping? Is it the product manager? Is it the architect? Is it the UX designer? Is it the engineer?
So I think that depends on your team structure, but in a largest organization, probably it's the product manager or the product owner. Or maybe in a Microsoft or a Google, it could also be the UX designer. So it depends on the team structure.
But if there's one takeaway from this session for anybody here, whether you're in product management or not, everybody can do prototyping. One of the best, Joel on software, there's this blog, a very popular one. He has this lovely definition of what a spec should be. I encourage everyone to check it out. It's called whattimeisit.com. So he's written a spec for what time is it. Like, if you're building an app for what time is it. And he's gone and done hand mocks for that. It's beautiful for the purpose that it serves. So I would recommend everyone to do it, but at least in larger companies, it tends to be typically the designers and or the product managers. But anybody can do it. The engineer can do it. Business person can do it. Whatever. One question I think in the back there.
So this question is for in the early stages of the companies. I think all of you on the panel have products which would have seen significant competition in the early stages. FusionCharts or website optimizer, everything. So how do you tap into competition's features or ideas? I mean, please share your experiences of. I would see that the competition tells you a lot more of what consumer wants if some feature is popular, and how do you tap into those and your experiences on how it has helped or some bad decisions where you copied the competitor and it really did not matter for your product.
So a couple of simple things. First up, take your competitor name, add sucks to it, search on Google. So you'll find a lot of articles about why your competitor sucks and essentially the points where you could work on them. Second, go to their forums. You'll find people asking why this is not working, or even if this is working, if there was a simpler way. Their blogs, their Facebook pages, social media. All the consumers of any product are now on the web, and they're talking on the web about different aspects of the product. And you just need to tap into that data and build up on it. And if you're able to even, the best part is if you can engage those customers even further, that say, hey, I know you have a problem with this. By the way, you're looking at solving this either as a product or a service. Again, asking them questions. If there was a magic wand which you could wave around and solve all these problems, what are the top 3 problems you'd like to be solved? And that way you get a good chunk of information.
I have a bit of contrarian viewpoint on this. I think competition is really, really good at the early stages. If you're building a product and you see competition, that's the most exciting thing that you can have at the early stage. And the reason behind is because most of the product ideas that you get, they are usually not proven. You have to figure out whether there is a market out there for it, or whether people will buy it, or whether people will simply ignore it. But if you have 3 or 4 competitors out there and you know that they are addressing the same market, you know people have been doing this for long and the market is profitable and I can make money on it. Now the only thing you need to go out and see how my product will be differentiated. And as Pallav said, you can go to the forums, you can talk to the customers, or you can simply drive traffic bidding on those keywords and ask them what is that really nagging you with these existing solutions and which I can add into my product. So having competition is really good. And yeah.
So one last question. We have time for one last question. Anyone?
I'll go ahead. This is a question for Pallav. Pallav, you talked about that you look at the developers community and you create the awareness of your product. Now, is there something you guys also offer in terms of prototyping, helping enterprises do the prototyping of some of their ideas? You as a product company.
Can you just rephrase the question? I'm not sure if I've
So
gotten it completely.
as a product company, do you also offer some kind of help to the developer community to prototype the products in their own
You mean
organizations?
test and try our products?
Yes. Try the products as well as prototype, because it takes a bit of a time to ramp up. So is there some kind of help you guys offer to the developers?
Sure. So as I mentioned, there are 3 parts to a product. One is the core product itself, one is the packaging, and third is the support. This is what you're talking about, the packaging part of it, like how you can get your product in the customer's mind very soon. So for example, for FusionCharts, we give a guarantee that if you cannot use our product in less than 15 minutes, we give you your entire money back, unconditional. And what we have done, especially for the developer community, so there are multiple things which we have done. One is make very exhaustive documentation for each segment of the user. So there's a beginner documentation, there's an intermediate documentation, there's an advanced documentation, and over and top of that, there's an API documentation. So each developer, based on his preference, can go to that. Second, we build real-life demos for each industry. So based on if you're a call center, or if you're a government or an educational organization, we have ready-made demos for you. So you can go ahead, pick it up in your programming language, change the code, and build on top of it. Then we build up knowledge bases. We have a customer support system where developers sit and reply to it. And then we also open a community for each developer to access other developers who are using our product so that they proactively help each other. So all in all, an ecosystem around the product, which is the packaging part of it, helps developer get on with the product very fast. For them, time is very important. So you need to ensure that typical turnaround time is anything between 6 to 24 hours, else they'll feel that you're a lazy company and you're not interested in them.
So I think we'll wrap up now, and I'll pass over to Amit to just summarize the learnings here.
Okay. So I'll do it. So can we put up the slide that we had? For the first bit, which is market estimation or sizing, the one that I take away is, talk to lots of users, different tools. Somebody suggested LinkedIn poll, SurveyMonkey, whatever. Talk to lots of users. The second one, which was more on, sorry? The vetting the idea. I loved what Pallav said. There is no such thing, or rarely such a thing as a brilliant idea on time t = 0. You have to keep refining it, improving it, doing managing and vetting of that idea. Prototyping, lots of good ideas in terms of tools you can use, time box it, make it really simple, you know, Firebug, Snagit, PowerPoint, Excel, Paper, etc. And then Pallav, Paras and Amit concluded with, you have to keep iterating and building on this, trying different versions, trying different ways to test it, and so forth. So with that, I want to thank my fellow panelists and the audience for great participation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause goes out to our panelists. We request you to remain seated as I call on Indus Kethan from Bitsa Mobile to hand over mementos on behalf of NASSCOM. Indus is one of the black shirt volunteers. They're the ones who've been helping us through the next 2 days for the NASSCOM Product Conclave 2011. Meanwhile, this is the one time that I'm going to ask you to pull out your mobile phones. Can I see all the mobile phones in your hand, please, right away? Please pull them out of your pockets. You don't have to move them to vibrate mode, but very quickly pull out your mobile phones. We'd love to have your feedback.